Breaking news, a new report from the Washington Post documents President Trump's dealings with families of troops killed in action, including one man who says the president offered to pay him $25,000, never delivered on his promise. White House official tells CNN the check was sent today. The story comes during a week of controversy surrounding the president's treatment of Gold Star families. Let's get more from our political experts. And Gloria, let me start with you. You've spent a lot of time studying Donald Trump over the years. Do you believe he would have written that check, sent that check today, if the Washington Post had not contacted the White House and informed them that the check was never received by the father of this killed U.S. soldier?
Well, it seems to be more than a coincidence, Wolf, that the check is written today, the same day that the Post makes inquiries about it, given the fact that the president had the conversation over the summer. And, you remember that when the president said he was going to donate X amount to veterans groups, and that also did not occur until after the Washington Post made inquiries about it. So I think you'd have to say, Wolf, that, this does look a bit suspicious. However, the president did make an offer of a personal donation to a father in grief who was saying that his ex-wife was going to get the death benefit and he had no money and needed something, and the president did, verbally at least, reach out, and today they're sending the check, and I think it's clear it's because they were called on it by a news organization.
David Chalian, how do you see it?
Well, the coincidence is clear. There's no doubt that the call from the Washington Post caused them to follow through and caused the president to actually send the check. It's also in that same phone call over the summer that Gloria is talking about. The president took a moment after offering it to make sure to note to this grieving parent that this is something other presidents haven't done, but that he's doing. So he wanted credit for this gesture, for writing this check, but didn't follow through with actually delivering on it until asked about it.
And Nia Malika Henderson is with us as well. Nia, the president was already getting lots of grief, incredible backlash for the comments he supposedly delivered to the widow of a U.S. soldier killed in Niger. According to this congresswoman, this Democratic congresswoman from Florida who was listening in on the conversation on a speakerphone, the president said he said to the widow he knew, referring to the fallen soldier, he knew what he signed up for. Listen to how the congresswoman who represents the family and has known the family for many years spoke about this.
For him to say that this young man stayed in school, did all the right things, went into the service, became a sergeant so quickly that he signed up for his own death? That is so insensitive.
How did she hear it? What was her response?
She was crying. She broke down. And she said he didn't even know his name.
Nia, the family of Sergeant LaDavid Johnson confirmed what the congresswoman said, Congresswoman Wilson's account of this phone conversation. How did this unfold?
Well, it sounds like President Trump made these phone calls to these families and that people were on the call with him. John Kelly, for instance, was on this call. According to Sarah Huckabee Sanders, their account is that the president, at least in sentiment, was expressing condolences and was very respectful to the family. Obviously, what we're hearing from the family is that they took it in a very different way. It sounds to me like the White House is saying, at least in part, that the president's heart was in the right place. He wanted to do the right thing. He wanted to communicate the right thing, but his words didn't necessarily match up to that. The president, of course, has come out and said he didn't say those words at all and that he had proof that he didn't say those words. The White House has also said that there's no transcript or recording of that conversations, and the White House also seems to be suggesting sort of take John Kelly's word for it. But you hope for those families that they are able to get out of the spotlight in this way. It must be hard for them being the subject of these conversations and the back and forth with this president.
You know, David Chalian, the president, did tweet right after this congresswoman spoke out, Democrat congresswoman, totally fabricated what I said to the wife of a soldier who died in action, and I have proof. Sad. Listen to what Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the White House press secretary, said today when the whole issue of General Kelly, John Kelly, the White House chief of staff, who lost his son in Afghanistan back in 2010. Listen to how she framed this.
I think that General Kelly is disgusted by the way that this has been politicized, and that the focus has become on the process and not the fact that American lives were lost. I think he's disgusted and frustrated by that. And if he has any anger, it's towards that.
But David, it was the president himself who brought General Kelly and his fallen son into this entire conversation.
Yes. General Kelly's disgust and anger and frustration should be directed towards one person, his boss who sits in the Oval Office, because it was Donald Trump who got on conservative talk radio and threw out General Kelly's name to enter into the political bloodstream to start muddying the waters of this conversation and help Donald Trump politically in this scenario by saying, hey, you know what? Somebody should ask John Kelly if Barack Obama called him when his son died. Now, you know, Wolf, that General Kelly has spoken about his son not that often and has made clear he really wants that to be a private part of his life, not part of his public life as a four-star general, now as White House chief of staff. And yet his boss completely injected him into the middle of this political to and fray, which clearly, as Sarah Sanders says, is frustrating to the chief of staff.
Very quickly, Gloria, how do you see it?
Well, I see it the same way. If I were General Kelly, I'd be upset that whatever private conversation I had with Donald Trump about whether I got a phone call or didn't get a phone call from Barack Obama when my son was killed in action became a political football when the president mentioned it on talk radio as a way to deflect criticism from himself and onto his favorite nemesis, Barack Obama. And using General Kelly and using his deceased son this way is disgusting. And of course now, the story has snowballed because, there's a question of what the president said in his phone calls. And it goes on and on and on and on. But this started for General Kelly when the president brought him into this.
Yeah. All right, everybody stand by because there are more developments unfolding even as we speak. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back.